Pat Doris. Welcome to The Story. We're going to start tonight with a story about a former Portland business executive who's accused of taking tens of millions of dollars from the companies that he controlled. It's a question of ethics and probably morality and right versus wrong. And it's our big story tonight. This is a story that's very current and at the same time dates back 20 years to Portland business dealings and a man named Andrew Wiederhorn. The headline in the Oregonian newspaper says it all. Wiederhorn indicted again, accused of taking $47 million out of companies he controlled. Now, for those of you who don't know, Andrew Wiederhorn was a real Portland whiz kid. He grew up here with a single mom and became a self-made multimillionaire at a very young age. With this new indictment, the government is accusing him of taking millions of dollars in bogus loans for over the decades from the companies that he controlled, loans which were then kind of, forgiven. The government argues that money was really income, money that he should have paid taxes on, but did not. His lawyers, by the way, say he did nothing wrong. This is file video of Wiederhorn there on the right from about 20 years ago. Oregonian reporter Jeff Manning covered Wiederhorn almost from the beginning.
Boy, I can tell you a lot more than you ever want to know. I've been following him since the early, believe it or not, the early 90s. And he's a newsmaker. You got to give that to him.
Absolutely. Manning says Wiederhorn made a lot of money as a young man.
He's a local kid. I believe he went to Lincoln High School, and I believe he's told the story many times of how he was either a busboy or a waiter at John's Meat Market, a long-shuttered restaurant up in Northwest Portland. He liked the buzz. He liked the people that he helped order, and he was really, really brilliant. And he started a company in his 20s and built it into a multi-million-dollar operation. It's called Wilshire Financial, and for a while it seemed like the real deal.
Eventually, Wiederhorn and his wife at the time bought this mansion in the West Hills and then poured millions of dollars into renovations. When it was done, it included a full-size basketball court for his 6 kids. Jeff Manning clearly remembers in the early 2000s when Wiederhorn's bubble burst and he was indicted by the feds.
Many of the same allegations that he was loaning himself money out of the corporate treasury and not paying it back. But there was a different twist on that first one in that he was charged with paying an illegal gratuity to his co-conspirator, Jeff Grayson, the late Jeff Grayson, who was a very prominent money manager in town. They would help each other out. Jeff would loan Andy money. Andy would help out Jeff however he could. And it was the only problem with the whole scheme was the point of it was to hide the fact that Jeff had loaned Andy $160 million, or at least to their company, and they didn't pay it back. And Grayson hid it from his clients, and then it all came out, and it was just a huge scandal.
Now, this is video of a younger me and a younger Jeff Manning following lawyers out of federal court after one of the many court hearings on the issue. Wiederhorn was convicted of paying an illegal gratuity to Grayson and filing a false tax return. Wiederhorn insisted then he did nothing wrong, but he did go to federal prison for 14 months. And controversy followed him even into prison when the board of another company that he ran, called Fog Cutter Capital, decided to pay him a bonus of $2 million. Now, coincidentally, that was the exact same amount the government had fined him. And Fog Cutter also paid Wiederhorn a salary while he was locked up. When he got out of prison, Wiederhorn and his family moved to Southern California, where he became the CEO and controlling shareholder of a publicly traded company called Fat Brands, Inc. Its involvement in it is involved in the restaurant industry.
They pick up and leave Portland and go to LA, and he starts anew. And you really got to hand it to him that he is motivated and ingenious, and he was able to claw together enough money to start buying these small struggling restaurant chains. And it all started with Fatburger, which I'm told was a really popular burger joint in urban Los Angeles. And from there, he just went on this buying spree, and everything from round table pizza to hot dog on a stick.
Jeff Manning's story in the Oregonian refers to this new federal indictment, which spells out much of the government's case against Wiederhorn. In the indictment, the feds accuse Wiederhorn of a pattern of hiding payments to himself in the form of shareholder loans from his company starting way back, like 30 years ago. That was back when he was in Portland. The feds noted the loans totaled $65 million. It also accuses Wiederhorn of forgiving himself those loan debts, basically Wiederhorn deciding he did not need to pay back that $65 million. The feds argue that by 2010, Wiederhorn was back at it again with the two new companies. Over 11 years, they accuse him of taking bogus loans totaling $47 million now from the companies for his personal benefit. The feds say that was actually pay and that Wiederhorn should have reported that to the IRS and paid taxes on it. Sound familiar? The indictment also alleges that Wiederhorn decided the amount, timing, and form of extensions and forgiveness of his loans. Finally, the indictment alleges Wiederhorn and his family used the money for their personal benefit, including private jet travel, vacations, a Rolls-Royce Phantom, other luxury automobiles, jewelry, and even a piano. Now, as you might imagine, several law enforcement types had a lot to say about Mr. Wiederhorn after he was indicted. The U.S. Attorney for Central California said instead of looking out for shareholders, the defendant allegedly treated the company as his personal slush fund. The IRS special agent in charge in L.A. said the allegations contained in the indictment against Mr. Wiederhorn showed that he is a serial tax cheat. Wiederhorn is charged with wire fraud now and other financial crimes. He was also separately indicted for being a felon in possession of a firearm. He's pleaded not guilty to all of that. Also, the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission filed a civil lawsuit against Wiederhorn, his company, and two other executives. Wiederhorn's attorney had this to say: "We look forward to making clear in court that this is an unfortunate example of government overreach and a case with no victims, no losses, and no crimes." So, there you have it. A former Portland business whiz kid now indicted in California for allegedly taking $47 million out of companies that he controlled. By the way, before we move on, I want to celebrate and thank Jeff Manning from the Oregonian. In June, he told me he's retiring from the paper after almost 40 years. He is a top-notch business reporter, and our community has long benefited from his insightful, hard-hitting reporting. Enjoy your retirement, Jeff. Now, for the rest of you, what do you think of Andrew Wiederhorn? Send us an email, will you? The address is thestory@kgw.com, or call and leave a voicemail. The number is 503-226-5090. I look forward to hearing from you. Okay, now let's move on to a fact check of a political ad. This one's aimed at Multnomah County's current district attorney, Mike Schmidt. I love these. I hope you do too. Tomorrow we'll examine an attack ad that focuses on his rival, Nathan Vasquez. The ad we'll look at tonight is paid for by the campaign of Vasquez. He's a top deputy in the DA's office, and he's running against his boss. We'll take the ad apart line by line to see how accurate it is. Are you ready? Good. Here we go.
District Attorney Mike Schmidt encouraged the release of violent criminals, and they committed more crimes, including one linked to deaths of 4 women.
Okay, this statement shows links to an Oregonian story from August 16, 2023. It reports that a man named Jesse Calhoun is a person of interest in the death of 4 Portland area women. It also explains that Governor Kate Brown commuted the sentences of 41 prisoners who helped fight deadly wildfires that swept through western Oregon in 2020. Calhoun was one of those firefighters. By the way, he later told us that he's innocent, that he did not kill the women, and by the way, he has not been charged in their deaths. Here's the background. A spokeswoman for the district attorney's office said the office got 59 requests from people who asked to have their prison sentence commuted. Schmidt opposed 34 of those and then supported the rest. But the spokeswoman said DA Schmidt did not give any feedback on Calhoun because they were not given a meaningful opportunity to respond. The article reports that Governor Brown ended up commuting at least 23 people from Multnomah County, including Calhoun. At least 2 others who were also commuted along with him were later arrested for crimes. So I think this claim is a little bit squishy at best. It definitely needs a lot more context. It leads you to believe that this Calhoun guy did these terrible crimes, and while he has indeed been mentioned as a person of interest, he absolutely has not been charged with those murders. And from what I can tell from the Oregonian article, it's not like Schmidt was lobbying for Calhoun to be released. All right, here's the next line.
Under Mike Schmidt, we've had more murders than Seattle and San Francisco combined.
All right, with this one, context is important. If you look at the first 3 months of this year, it is accurate. Police report that Portland had 22 homicides, Seattle had 9, and San Francisco had 8. Now, if you're looking at a year-long trend, it's a bit different, but Portland still had more murders than either Seattle or San Francisco on a year-over-year basis starting back in 2020. The ad does not state a time frame, but the challenger Nathan Vasquez made that same point during a debate right here at KGW, so we can assume that's the time frame they mean. And because of that, we're going to call it accurate.
Gun violence saw record highs. We must enforce gun laws.
All right, on this one, it cites the Portland Police Bureau, stating that shooting incidents were up 48% over the last 3 years and pins the date as January 20th of 2023. Now, if you look at the bottom row here for the totals, you can see the numbers are way up since 2019 and even above 2020. But what the ad does not show is that in 2023, shootings dropped to a number that was below the previous 2 years, and this current year is trending even lower. So that claim in the ad is technically accurate, but really doesn't show the whole picture. Schmidt is still the DA. If you're going to pin rising shooting rates on him, then you should also pin falling shooting rates as well.
Under Schmidt, businesses leave because of crime.
Okay, that one, pretty much true. I'm not sure how many businesses left, but that is the main reason that REI gave for leaving the Pearl District.
To keep us safe, stop Mike Schmidt. Paid for by Vote for Vasquez, PAC ID 23012.
All right, that last line is kind of an opinion piece appealing to your fear about crime and danger here in Oregon's most populated county. Now, whether you agree with that opinion, I'm going to leave that one up to you. If you have strong feelings on this ad or if this race has really got you going, let us know, will you? You know the drill. Call or email. We'd love to hear from you. Coming up on the story, we're taking a look at the cleanup of Portland State University's library after protesters in support of Palestine took it over for several days.
The only way to get attention is to actually give people a reason to pay attention, and if that means spray painting a few walls that are going to be easily repainted anyways, I think that that's a good thing.
Easily? We'll see. The school's president says tensions are high on campus since the protest. We'll hear from her when the story returns. The people who took over Portland State University's library did a ton of damage. Early damage estimates say it could be $750,000. The PSU president says it could be more than $1 million. Pro-Palestinian protesters occupied the library for several days last month before police came in and arrested them. Only 6 of the 30 protesters arrested were PSU students, according to police. John Adams has a look at the damage and how it's going to be paid for.
The good news is the university does have insurance on the building, but would have to pay about a $100,000 deductible. Students or taxpayers could ultimately be on the hook for paying that bill. As the graffiti slowly gets scrubbed away inside Portland State's Millar Library, University President Ann Cudd continues to grapple with what took place inside 2 weeks ago.
It's not permanently destroyed. We will bring it back. But it breaks my heart.
Now, the focus has shifted to how PSU can prevent another incident like this from happening in the future while upholding students' ability to peacefully protest.
We've seen, many students around the country have been able to draw that line, but then in some places, especially in places where outsiders have come in and fueled the flames, it's gone too far.
But with the protests still top of mind for many, President Cudd says tensions are still high on campus.
In recent days, I've been meeting with different groups of students and community members who are angry about how long we allowed the library occupation, about why we worked with the police to clear it, and about the climate on campus, which feels really very fraught.
Despite the library being unusable until the fall at the earliest, some students on campus say they support what took place inside and believe it's important to raise awareness about the situation in Gaza.
You have to really make waves, basically. You have to make it so people can't ignore you. And the only way that we saw doing that on campus is by taking over the library.
The only way to get attention is to actually give people a reason to pay attention. And if that means spray painting a few walls that are going to be easily repainted anyways, I think that that's a good thing.
The opinions of some students showing the delicate tightrope the president is having to walk between defining what is and isn't acceptable on college campuses.
We will continue to uphold the right to free speech and peaceful dissent on campus, while also enforcing our campus policies about hate, trespassing, and property damage.
President Ann Cudd was asked today if the university would ultimately decide to pursue non-student protesters that were inside the library for damages. The president said they hadn't considered that yet, but it was an interesting question.
All right, thank you, John. Still ahead, in the race for Washington's governor, it was looking for a while like the meme of the 3 Spider-Mans. 3 Bob Fergusons in the race, all running as Democrats? But Attorney General Bob says that's not funny.
Anti-democracy Republicans orchestrated a deceptive and illegal scheme to deceive voters.
The legal action his campaign threatened against the other 2 Bobs when we come back. Let's check in now on the race for Washington's governor. Yes, Southwest Washington, we're thinking about you. The primary is in 3 months in August, but the filing deadline was last Friday, and this weekend things got a little confusing there when 3 people named Bob Ferguson filed to run for governor. Not kidding. You're probably familiar with the first Bob Ferguson, Bob Watson Ferguson. He's been the Attorney General in Washington since 2013, and he announced his campaign for governor back in September of last year. But then another Bob Ferguson jumped into the race at the 11th hour last Friday. He's a U.S. Army veteran from Graham, Washington. His full name is Bob Benjamin Ferguson. Then a third Bob Ferguson, a man named Bob Arthur Ferguson from Yakima, also filed to run for governor also on Friday. They all 3 filed to run as Democrats. That's a little confusing, huh? The Washington State Standard, that's a news outlet, reports that the 2 new Bobs were a scheme devised by conservative Republican activist Glenn Morgan. Morgan apparently contacted 53 different Washington residents named Bob Ferguson to try and recruit them to run for governor. These 2 agreed. Neither has any political experience, and Morgan paid the $1,900 filing fee for them. Now, the original Bob Ferguson, the Attorney General Bob Ferguson, was not amused. He had his campaign lawyers send a cease and desist letter to the other 2 Bobs over the weekend, letting them know they could actually go to jail for running for governor with the same name as him, even though it's their legal name. The conservative activist Glenn Morgan posted a video on YouTube about it.
Any resident and voter of Washington State, whatever name they have, should be able to run for political office. Both of these candidates had campaign plans and platforms that they were working on, silenced now forever under duress and threats of arrest by the highest law enforcement officer in the state of Washington.
It is an interesting situation. If the 2 new Bobs had campaign plans, though, they weren't posted on their websites, and their sites have now been taken down. So put us down as doubtful. Attorney General Bob Ferguson held a press conference Monday calling on the other Bobs to drop out of the race and saying that they were a threat to democracy.
Their goal is clear: to mislead voters and split my supporters 3 ways to depress my vote total and keep me from moving into the top 2 in the general election.
Ferguson said that if the other Bobs didn't drop out, he'd ask the Secretary of State to change up the way the ballot appears. He said he wanted the candidates to be called Robert Ferguson on the ballot and have him be the only Bob, and to have them have their middle names and occupations listed as well. He also wanted his name moved up.
After the drawing of straws on Friday afternoon, one of these Bob Fergusons will appear second on the ballot, the other will appear third on the ballot, and I appear number 13 on the ballot. Look, anyone who has any knowledge of campaigns knows that in a ballot with 30 names, as Dan mentioned, all sorts of studies show that many voters don't get past the first few names. And what I would say is, if the ballot order remains unchanged, there is no question that thousands of Washingtonians will think they're voting for me, and they'll really be voting for these other 2 individuals. That's just a fact. That is going to happen.
Well, not anymore. Bob Ferguson's #1 campaign threatened Bob Ferguson #2 and Bob Ferguson #3 with prosecution, citing an 80-year-old Washington state law which makes it a felony to file for an office with the same name as someone whose political reputation is widely known, with intent to confuse and mislead the electors. That worked out pretty well, huh? Very specific. It did work. The other 2 Bobs said, okay, we're out. And they dropped out. They posted statements on their short-lived campaign websites. Bob Ferguson from Graham said he was withdrawing under duress and with a heavy heart. And he said, after my candidacy was announced, I was faced with harassment and legal action if I did not withdraw from the race. I was publicly labeled a threat to democracy. And in a typical hypocritical fashion, this other candidate's actions are a true threat to democracy. Well, that wasn't all. Bob Ferguson from Yakima said that it was the second worst day of his life. He wrote, "A dream of mine was destroyed. I realized my campaign would appear to be like an ant running against a bulldozer, but I always thought that we lived in a free country where anyone could run for public office no matter how much an underdog they were." Now, there are 28 candidates in total running for governor in Washington state, but there's only one Bob Ferguson. His name will appear 11th on the ballot. Interesting story, huh? That's the end of our show. Thanks for watching. And remember, the story, our collective story, that never ends. Good stuff's coming up next. I'll see you tomorrow night right back here at 6:30.